This week on Christian World News, from beggar to lawmaker, how this man escaped a brutal regime to find freedom and why he's become North Korea's #1 target.
Plus, one man's bucket list delivering clean drinking water around the world. He'll show us the technology that's helped hundreds of thousands of people.
And for the first time in decades, the U.S. Navy is expanding its Chaplain Corps. See what's behind this new push for spiritual readiness. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. An estimated 34,000 North Koreans have made the life or death journey from bondage to freedom in South Korea.
As my colleague Chris Mitchell reports from Seoul, one defector has become the #1 target of the North Korean regime.
Behind me is the Parliament of South Korea. One member of the legislature made a remarkable and miraculous journey from being a child beggar in North Korea to a member of South Korea's parliament. CBN News met with that legislator, Ji Sung-ho, who now has an ambitious goal.
My hope as a member of the National Assembly is for the North Korean regime to collapse so that North Koreans can enjoy freedom and believe in God. I want to dedicate myself to the creation of such freedom and unity.
Sung-ho showed us a painting of a kutsebi, what they call a child beggar in North Korea, and how he survived as a child when millions starved to death. At age 14, he lost his leg and hand in an accident. And at the age of 24, Sung-ho fled to freedom.
I escaped North Korea with no leg and no left hand. I swam the Tumen River to avoid the eyes of the North Korean soldiers. I walked 6,000 kilometers to China, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand, and turned around 10,000 kilometers to reach South Korea. The fact that I came to freedom on crutches made the whole world aware of how strong the will of human beings is to yearn for freedom.
In China, Sung-ho heard the gospel and became a Christian. And when he came to South Korea, it was like a dream.
Everything I thought of, dreamt of, and prayed for came true. For example, the dream of wanting to eat a full meal, such as chicken, has come true. And I had the dream of walking the world once again. When I came to South Korea, the government gave me a new prosthetic leg and arm, so I was able to walk again.
President Trump honored Sung-ho during the 2018 State of the Union address. Because of his high profile, North Korea has named him their #1 target. He says countries should pressure China not to extradite defectors back to North Korea, where they then face death or life as political prisoners.
People imprisoned in North Korean political prison camps are treated as animals, not people. And everybody in North Korea are well aware of this.
Sung-ho now serves as an advocate for human rights and the 34,000 defectors in South Korea. His role model is Martin Luther King, and this former beggar child now meets with world leaders.
My message is that North Koreans have the right to live in freedom, and those who live in a free democracy have a responsibility to save those who are imprisoned and dying. They have a responsibility to make sure that even those who are starving to death live and enjoy the freedom we enjoy.
Despite the current situation, Sung-ho believes reunification is possible.
I don't think it's impossible because it's clear that North Korea is a dictatorship, and I don't know of any dictatorship in history that has lasted forever. Furthermore, I have the idea that politics should be carried out from a long-term perspective so that free democracy and the gospel can be preached to North Koreans and integration can be achieved after unification.
Sung-ho asked Christians around the world to pray.
I believe that the gospel entering North Korea and the collapse of the North Korean system depends not on human efforts, but on God's hand. I would appreciate it if you would join us in prayer so that we can reunify as a free and democratic nation.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Seoul, South Korea.
Wow, what an inspiring story. Yeah, really. You know, the fight against worldwide religious persecution takes a center stage this week in Washington, D.C.
The International Religious Freedom Summit brings together unlikely allies who are reaching across political barriers to protect people's right to worship freely. Tara Mergener brings us the story.
Religious violence has risen to historic and alarming levels over the past decade, even in places you might not expect. The summit held here in our nation's capital aims to create a powerful, albeit unlikely, coalition to highlight the plight of the persecuted and look for solutions.
The Hamas terror attack on Israel in October brings a sobering impact to this year's meeting.
The attacks in Israel were motivated by deep religious hatred, by a profound and saturated anti-Semitism in Hamas. And that attack, and now the conflict in Gaza, has the potential to put at risk the stability of the whole world.
From China and North Korea to Africa, the Middle East, and beyond, an estimated 360 million Christians face persecution worldwide, with more than a dozen killed each day over their faith.
You've got so many of our enemies attacking us. Whether it's Russia that's attacking, whether it's Iran that's attacking, whether it's really Turkey through Azerbaijan on Armenia attacking. And almost every one of these situations has a deep religious component to it.
No faith community is spared. Attacks on religious freedom touch each culture, nation, religion, and political system across the world. Unexpected cases are now also popping up in established democracies like Japan and Finland.
The right to practice one's religion of choice is so frequently violated by governments all over the world.
That message will again be loud and clear through first-person accounts at the summit.
I stand here before you today as a witness to the regime's abuse and to represent thousands who have been tortured or executed in Iran's prison.
At a time of great division, the nation's capital will serve as the epicenter of a powerful bipartisan movement for advocates and politicians from all over the world to work to protect the rights of all to worship as they choose.
Some of the people we have brought together, very progressive Democrats, with very conservative, socially conservative Republicans. We have brought, for example, representatives from the American Atheists. It's really, in that sense, quite an inspiring movement and very much a positive counterpoint to all the division we face on so many fronts.
In addition to persecution, special sessions will promote interfaith dialogue to help promote peace and create a blueprint for international collaboration and legislation here at home.
We're going to see if we can come up with some agenda items that we can put forward in front of the Congress that can build a longer-term solution.
Organizers say a key goal will be avoiding partisan politics and pushing governments to help ensure religious freedom is an important foreign policy issue as well as a fundamental human right. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. Up next, one man's bucket list, delivering clean drinking water around the world.
Welcome back to Christian World News. A Texas man on a mission trip asked for a glass of water and came face to face with a stark reality. Most people in the world don't have access to safe drinking water.
And that is when Chris Beth heard the Lord speak two words: help them. Well, 10 years later, 250,000 families in more than 20 nations now have clean water. Charlene Aaron brings us this remarkable story.
From its headquarters here in North Texas, the Bucket Ministry is fulfilling its mission of sharing the love of God through providing the gift of safe, clean drinking water in places like North America, South America, Central America, Asia, and Africa.
We have probably distributed filters in almost 30 countries now. We're actively working in about 12 countries.
During a 2012 missions trip with his daughter to the Brazilian Amazon, Texas businessman Chris Beth saw firsthand what it meant to not have access to clean water after being asked if he was thirsty.
I expected her to go into a refrigerator and get a bottle of water. But what she did in turn is she went out into this little plank on this house, bent down with 2 cups. They were irregular, they were mismatched and cracked, and she filled these 2 cups up with river water.
Shocked by what he saw, Beth says what happened next was something he never imagined.
I've never been in the business of hearing God's voice. In fact, I thought when people say, God told me, I would think, oh boy. Yeah. And so I heard something, and I heard two words, and he clearly said, help them.
Beth began searching for a way to help as soon as he returned home. He found the answer at a Dallas camping supply store, where Beth saw a filter that uses the same technology as kidney dialysis that could be used to remove harmful bacteria from dirty water.
It attaches to any bucket or receptacle. I've went ahead and put some lake water in here from the local lake, so we'll see if we can make some clean water from this. So we'll tip the filter down and allow it to start filtering into the clean cup. And as you can see, the water is going from the bucket, through the hose, through the filter. The filter is capturing all the dirt, the debris, the parasites, everything that's making people sick from drinking unclean surface water. And this is what we're left with as a result.
Now equipped with filters, the Bucket Ministry was born as Beth returned to Brazil, supplying communities with clean, safe drinking water. Today, the ministry has a growing presence in more than 20 countries.
In the last 10 years, we've probably distributed in excess of 250,000. So we've helped about 250,000 families. Just last year alone, we distributed about 35,000.
One of its main outreaches is in the Kibera slum in Nairobi, Kenya, home to some 400,000 people. Most human waste ends up in the river that runs through the slum, contaminating the water, leading to disease and death. Daryl Larson serves as International Director for Sawyer Products, which makes the filter used by the ministry.
Our filter that you could take, the same one that backpackers and hikers use on the trail, but we devised a way to hook it up to a bucket, which is very common all around the world. And that's kind of how the Bucket Ministry started.
Larson says when his company, which gives 90% of its annual profits to clean water projects, learned that Beth wanted to give clean water to the entire Kibera slum, it jumped at the opportunity to get involved.
He had this incredible map of the slum, 3 square miles, 400,000 people, and it ended up being 95,000 homes. And Sawyer actually donated all 95,000 of the filters.
The difference has been life-saving, as the number of people sick and dying from waterborne illness has dropped dramatically.
We are hearing reports that the numbers of patients coming through clinics are so few compared to what it was that clinics are having to close and consolidate operations.
Providing clean water has also led to many opportunities to share the gospel.
We use the water as a tool, and it's a tool to get to that point of sharing the gospel. So for us, it's all about the Great Commission and going and making disciples.
The filter can last more than 20 years if cleaned daily. Each filter distributed is stamped with a unique barcode, something that allows Beth and his team to track the success of the filter, as well as the physical and spiritual health of families and communities they serve.
I've been blessed over 10 years to be able to see mothers that didn't name their children because they knew the children were going to die. I get to see them have this clean water for the first time through this simple tool.
A simple tool that's made a big difference in Beth's life, too.
Prior to the last 10 years, I was not involved with the church. I wasn't even a very good follower of Jesus. Now I get to see him work every single day. And what it's done for me is it's given me a faith that I don't think I would have ever had without seeing him work like this.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Houston.
Up next, a new military push for spiritual readiness, how the Chaplain Corps helps bring transformation to America's soldiers, right after this.
Welcome back. Is the United States military in decline? Recruitment numbers across all branches have fallen, and with the global conflicts just growing, some lawmakers say It's time to act to strengthen American security. Speaking at the Heritage Foundation, Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker said the military has seen a decade of decline due to tightening purse strings for U.S. defense.
Everyone from the United Nations to the folks working for us, Democrat and Republican, say this is the most dangerous time. So what do we do to answer 10 years of decline? We, I think, need a massive increase in defense spending.
The Heritage Foundation has released the 2024 Military Strength Index. For the second year in a row, it's ranked the U.S. as, quote, weak.
The Pentagon is addressing a new need in our armed forces, what one leader calls spiritual readiness. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke explores the growing demand for chaplains in our military.
For the first time since the Cold War, the Navy is expanding its chaplain corps. This year alone, the goal is to fill 70 active duty slots, a number that would place one chaplain on board every destroyer.
A lot of the bad behaviors, a lot of the evidences of stress are reduced on ships, in units that have chaplains.
Rear Admiral Gregory Todd serves as the Navy's Chief of Chaplains, a position that also covers the Marine Corps and Coast Guard. Over the course of his career, Todd has worked as a chaplain in all three branches, responding to Ground Zero after 9/11 and deploying to both Iraq and Afghanistan.
The funny thing about being a chaplain is the most satisfying moments are in some of the most challenging times, because you're there to bring God into that situation.
With growing mental health issues threatening service members across the board, Todd says chaplains can be the tip of the spear.
We become often first responders for them as they experience some of these stress issues. Some of them are normal stressors of life, and we can help them and normalize those things. But we also work with our partners in the mental health world. When something becomes a lot more serious than just a normal stressor.
According to research from Columbia University, Duke, and Harvard, those engaged in spiritual practices are 50 to 80% less likely to die by suicide and 60% less likely to suffer depression. Todd says the Pentagon's decision to grow the Chaplain Corps is part of an effort to better care for people, a new emphasis on what he calls spiritual readiness. Now it's up to him to fill the vacancies, and he's counting on a new generation to answer the call. While a chaplain at Emory University, Lieutenant Commander Saul Burleson says God put military ministry on his heart.
When I looked at the men and women in uniform, what I found was people who were committing their lives to something greater, something greater than themselves. They were serving the Constitution. They were upholding and defending our inalienable rights.
Burleson now serves as a Navy chaplain on the USS Macon Island. While his sailors are similar in age to the college students with whom he once worked, the job responsibilities look quite different.
We're embedded with our sailors, our Marines, our Coast Guardsmen. We serve all the sea services and the men and women in uniform in those, wherever they're at, on board a ship, across the Atlantic or Pacific, with the Marines in a desert or in the Arctic. We're with them wherever they are.
Sometimes I would joke, I'd say, my job is to hang out with you guys as you do your job. But the reality is you're there to spend time, to tell stories, to go to the motor pool, to be there. And then in that life connection, transformation begins to take place. Someone needs time. People go, hey, Chaplain, you got a minute? The answer is always yes.
Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Moore is an Army chaplain. After years deploying with soldiers, he now serves as a recruiter for the chaplaincy school at Fort Jackson. As the branch with the largest chaplain corps, Moore says the Army isn't looking to grow, but rather to maintain.
We're looking at recruiting the best qualified. Really, we're looking at about 300 each year. But when you think about all of the qualifications, it is hard to find the best qualified to continue to serve.
Military chaplains are required to meet the same age and physical fitness standards as any other service member. Plus, there's educational requirements, which include a bachelor's degree, a master's in divinity or some area of religion, and then professional ministry experience.
Soldiers give up an awful lot, but they shouldn't have to give up their faith. So we want the best qualified chaplains of all different faith groups.
Second Lieutenant Michael Engelsterd is a candidate at the Army's chaplaincy school. He felt called to minister to soldiers after his own military service. As he goes through the chaplaincy program, he's learning to view the men and women he serves alongside in a much different light.
You know, it's a very different role. And as I'm learning things in seminary and learning about what ministry is, it's like I'm in the same places doing something completely different. And being able to draw on that experience while still having to get used to the new lens of what it means to be a chaplain.
3 decades into his career, Admiral Todd calls caring for the men and women of the armed services a sacred honor and privilege.
I said, okay, Lord, I'll do this for 4 years. I'll do one tour, and that's been over 30 years ago. This flock has a way of getting under your skin. And so then the prayer turned to, Lord, I'll do this as long as you need me to do this, because I love doing it and I'm happy to do that. But I can't decide when to go home. You have to tell me. And so I'm still here until the Navy says, okay, now you have to go home. You're too old. You have to go home now.
While the Navy is currently asking for 70 additional chaplains, Todd anticipates need for even further growth, and the Marine Corps and Coast Guard are expected to follow suit. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Finally this week, some good news on the revival front.
Yeah, the spiritual outpouring that began in 2023 is continuing into this brand new year. On the social media site X, evangelist Matt Brown of Think Eternity noted that crowds at several New Year's events added up to more than 100,000 people, including 55,000 at the annual Passion Conference in Atlanta. Brown says that doesn't include the millions of people who worshiped at local churches to pray in the new year, as well as many who are fasting and praying during the first weeks of 2024. And I'm getting ready, George, to head over to Asbury University in Kentucky, because, you know, they had the big outpouring a year ago. So we'll see how they're doing.
Okay, folks, that's it for this week's edition of Christian World News.
Thanks so much. God bless you. Have a great weekend.